Cloud's lonely watch. The wind was Cloud's constant companion, a playful gust that tousled his long white mane and carried the scent of salt and thrift. He stood on the highest point of the pasture, a sentinel overlooking the churning gray sea. His hooves were planted firmly on the cliff-top turf, cropped short by the wind and dotted with stubborn wildflowers. Below, gulls wheeled and cried, their calls a familiar soundtrack to his solitary existence. He wasn't lonely, not precisely. He had the sun on his back, the wind in his face, and the endless horizon to contemplate. Cloud knew the rhythms of this land intimately. He knew when the tide would be high, when the storms would roll in from the west, and when the first lambs would bleat their way into the world. He also knew the patterns of the two-legged creatures who occasionally ventured onto his domain. The ramblers, the bird-watchers, the lovers seeking solitude. He observed them all with quiet curiosity. But it was the pair who came most frequently who held his attention. The man, always impeccably dressed even here, his dark coat flapping theatrically in the breeze. And the girl, small and pale, confined to a wheeled contraption that struggled on the uneven ground. Mr. Sterling and Lily. Today, as on so many days, Cloud saw their familiar silhouette appear on the path leading to the cliff edge. Mr. Sterling pushed Lily's wheelchair with a grim determination, his face set like granite. Even from this distance, Cloud sensed the tension radiating from the man, a tight coil of barely suppressed anger. Lily, on the other hand, always seemed to find joy in the smallest things. The flash of a kingfisher's wing, the scent of heather, the feel of the sun on her skin. Cloud had seen her laugh, a bright, clear sound that momentarily banished the shadows that clung to her father. They stopped a little way from the edge, where the wind was less fierce. Mr. Sterling set the brake on the wheelchair with unnecessary force. The click echoed unnaturally in the vast emptiness. "Here," he said, his voice clipped and devoid of warmth. "You can see the seals today." Lily strained forward, her eyes, large and luminous, scanning the rocks below. "Oh, Papa, you're right. There are dozens of them." A genuine delight colored her tone. Cloud watched. Mr. Sterling remained standing behind her, his hands resting on the wheelchair handles, but his posture was rigid, distant. He did not share her enthusiasm. He never did. "They're just seals," he muttered, his voice barely audible above the wind. "Ugly, noisy creatures." Lily's smile faltered, though she didn't let it disappear completely. "I think they're beautiful," she said softly. "So sleek and graceful in the water." Mr. Sterling sighed, a sound of profound impatience. "You find beauty in everything, Lily. It's quite tiresome." Cloud shifted his weight, a low rumble in his chest. The man's words were like shards of ice, cutting through the girl's fragile joy. He didn't understand them, not exactly, but he sensed their cruelty. He knew, instinctively, that Lily deserved better. The silence stretched, broken only by the cries of the gulls and the relentless crash of the waves. Lily continued to watch the seals, her face turned away from her father. Cloud could see the slight tremor in her shoulders, the subtle tightening of her jaw. She was trying to hide her hurt, to pretend that his words hadn't stung. Mr. Sterling cleared his throat. "Are you quite finished admiring the wildlife?" he asked, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "I haven't got all day to stand here freezing." Lily nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes, Papa, I'm finished." Mr. Sterling turned the wheelchair abruptly, the movement almost violent. Lily gasped, her small hands gripping the armrests. Cloud watched them go, a knot of unease tightening in his gut. He couldn't explain it, but something felt wrong. The way Mr. Sterling treated Lily, the coldness in his eyes, the palpable resentment that seemed to cling to him like a shroud. It was all unnatural. He remained on his lonely watch, the wind whipping around him, the sea roaring below. He saw many things from his vantage point, but nothing troubled him more than the sight of Mr. Sterling and Lily, and the silent, unspoken suffering that seemed to shadow their every visit. He knew, with a certainty that settled deep in his bones, that something was terribly amiss. A father's grumble. Cloud shifted, the morning sun warming his dark coat. From his vantage point on the hill, he watched Mr. Sterling struggle to push Lily's wheelchair up the slight incline. The man's face was a clenched fist of displeasure. He grunted with each push, the sound raw and ugly in the otherwise peaceful morning. "Honestly, Lily," he said, his voice tight, "couldn't you have picked a flatter spot? My back is killing me." Lily, bundled in a bright yellow shawl, turned her face towards him, a hopeful smile gracing her lips. "But Papa, the view is so lovely from here. I can almost see the ocean sparkling." Mr. Sterling didn't respond to her enthusiasm. He stopped abruptly, letting go of the wheelchair handles. It rolled back a few inches, and Lily gasped, reaching out to steady herself. "Honestly, girl," he repeated, wiping a bead of sweat from his brow with a handkerchief, "you're a constant drain. A constant reminder." Cloud's ears twitched. He didn't understand the words exactly, but the tone was unmistakable. It was the same tone he heard when the wind howled before a storm, a tone of warning and discomfort. He pawed the ground, a low rumble vibrating in his chest. Lily's smile faltered, but she quickly recovered. "Look, Papa, a bluebird, right there on that branch." She pointed with a delicate hand, adorned with a silver ring. Mr. Sterling followed her gaze, his expression unchanged. "Birds? Just birds. What's so special about them?" He resumed pushing, his movements jerky and impatient. The wheels of the wheelchair crunched on the gravel path. "They sing, Papa," Lily said softly, her voice barely audible above the sound of the wheels. "They sing about the sun and the flowers and happiness." "Happiness," Mr. Sterling scoffed under his breath. Cloud saw his shoulders slump even further. He looked old, worn down by something more than just the incline. They reached the crest of the hill. The view, as Lily had said, was indeed breathtaking. The valley unfolded below, a tapestry of greens and browns, dotted with wildflowers. In the distance, the ocean shimmered, a silver ribbon on the horizon. Lily inhaled deeply, her eyes closed. "Isn't it wonderful, Papa?" Mr. Sterling merely grunted again, pulling a flask from his pocket. He unscrewed the top and took a long swig, the amber liquid glinting in the sunlight. "Papa, do you remember when you used to bring me up here on your shoulders?" Lily asked, her voice wistful. Before I couldn't walk?" The man didn't answer. He stared out at the view, his gaze cold and distant. He took another swig from the flask. The silence stretched between them, thick and heavy. Cloud shifted again, his unease growing. The air itself felt brittle, charged with unspoken tension. He watched Lily's face. Her initial joy had faded, replaced by a quiet sadness that settled around her like a shroud. She was still looking at the view, but her eyes no longer held the same spark. Mr. Sterling finally spoke, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. "Those were different times, Lily. Things change." He walked away a few paces towards the edge of the cliff, leaving Lily alone in her wheelchair. The wheels were precariously close to the edge. Cloud snorted, a warning sound lost on the wind. He knew, with a growing certainty, that something was terribly wrong. The air tasted of despair, the unthinkable act. Salt-laced air, usually a comfort, scratched at Cloud's throat with the bitter tang of burnt offerings. He shuffled, a tremor of disquiet rippling beneath his hide. Sterling was on the bluffs with Lily again. Routine, yet a premonition coiled tight in Cloud's belly. He usually found a strange solace in their presence, the vibrant spark of Lily a stark contrast against the somber backdrop, her melodies painting the air with cheer. But today, the cliffs were silent, devoid of joy. Only Sterling's bowed frame and the rigid set of his features were visible. From the paddock, Cloud observed as Sterling maneuvered Lily's chair precariously close to the abyss. Too close by far. The gale buffeted Lily, whipping tendrils of hair across her pallid cheek. A feeble attempt to tame them betrayed her weakness. "Remember Cornwall, Lily?" Sterling's voice, gravelly and strained, barely pierced the wind's lament. "Sandcastles, defiant against the tide. You never yielded." Lily's head inclined, a ghost of a smile flickering across her face. The pink bucket. Gone. Sterling offered no reply. He produced a silver flask, the cap twisting off with a muted squeal, and imbibed deeply. The sharp, metallic edge of whiskey rode the wind. He faltered, his movements disjointed. His expression, ill content, not rage precisely, but a profound displeasure, as if her mere existence was an indictment. Cloud snorted, a low warning rumble in his chest. Something was amiss. The furtive glances Sterling cast toward the drop, the obsessive clenching and releasing of his grip on the chair, sent a shiver of unease through the animal. He neighed, a high-pitched cry slicing through the gale, desperate to caution Lily, to urge her to flee. But she only turned her head, her gaze distant, locked on some inner landscape. The ponies, Lily, remember? Sterling's voice dropped to a near inaudible murmur. Riding all day, fearless. What a waste. Her smile wavered, confusion clouding her features, quickly dissolving into dawning grief. I miss it, Father. I missed everything. Sterling took another pull from the flask, his hand trembling uncontrollably. Cloud strained against the fence, muscles coiled, poised to shatter the barrier. Then, with a sudden, brutal force, Sterling propelled the wheelchair forward. Cloud's scream was raw, a primal bellow of horror and disbelief. The wheels spun momentarily against the void before the chair. Lily, trapped within, plummeted over the edge. The sickening impact, a muffled crunch swallowed by the ravenous sea, reverberated through Cloud. He reared, hooves thrashing at the heavens, a futile display of anguish. The churning whitecaps were all he could see, the implacable rocks. Sterling remained immobile, the empty flask rolling away. He stood mute, unbreathing, his face an emotionless void. He simply stared at the absence where his daughter had been, his spirit hollowed out. Then he turned and slowly retreated, abandoning Cloud to the wind's mournful song, the relentless surf, and the unthinkable. A race against time. The shriek tore through Cloud's awareness, a feral sound that banished thought and left only instinct. It was Lily. His breath hitched, fear constricting his throat. He pivoted, hooves churning the loose dirt as he wheeled toward the hidden trail, a slender, treacherous path that plummeted down the cliffside. No deliberación, no hesitación, only the searing imperative to reach her. Now, the track, barely a handbreadth wider than himself, became a gauntlet. Thorns raked his coat. Jagged stones threatened to cripple him. Driven by an unseen force, a bond with Lily beyond articulation, he pressed onward. The surf roared below, a relentless cadence pounding in his temples, each crash a diminishing breath. He conjured her image, the laughter lines fanning from her eyes, the gentle slope of her cheek, the tremor in her fingers as she coaxed life onto paper, brown knit in concentration. These visions spurred him, a silent plea carried on the wind. The air thickened, saturated with the tang of brine. The path plunged, a dizzying series of switchbacks clinging to the cliff face. Cloud leaned into each turn, powerful muscles working to maintain purchase. He glimpsed the beach now, a narrow crescent fringed with cruel rocks, and something else small, unmoving, near the encroaching tide. His heart slammed against his ribs. He surged forward, ignoring the fire in his lungs, the ache in his muscles. The world shrank to that solitary form on the sand. Bursting onto the beach, sand showering from his hooves, he thundered toward her. The scene unfolded like a fractured dream, a tableau of bleakness and despair. Lily lay prone, her wheelchair toppled beside her. The waves whispered against her, tugging at her skirt like spectral fingers. He slid to a halt, his breath ragged and harsh. A gentle nudge with his muzzle, a soft nicker pleading in the air. Lily, silence. Panic, a frigid tide, washed over him, stealing his strength. He pressed harder, a desperate entreaty. Stillness. Lowering his head, he inhaled her scent, seeking any reassurance of life. The lingering fragrance of lavender clung to her hair, a painful echo of the vibrant soul she possessed. A faint pulse, thready and uneven, fluttered beneath her skin. His gaze darted wildly, encompassing the deserted expanse. He was alone, utterly, devastatingly alone. Powerless. A long, keening cry erupted from him, a sound that reverberated across the vacant shore. A dirge for a life stolen too soon. The breakers crashed on, oblivious to his anguish, their constant rhythm a cruel reminder of the dwindling time. He remained there, kneeling beside her, a silent sentinel in the face of crushing sorrow. The sun beat down, yet he felt only the chill of loss. The air burned his throat, yet he tasted only despair. He was a witness to an atrocity he could not undo, a prisoner of his limitations. And in that instant, a seed of fury took root, a burning need for reckoning, for retribution. Her death would not be meaningless. He would uncover the truth of this place, and those responsible would suffer. Hope on the shore. The brine-laced air assaulted Cloud's senses, a biting tang intensified by rising winds. He scraped at the shore, the dull thud of his hoof a frantic rhythm against the ocean's roar. He had to reach her. Desperation clawed at him. The cliff, the ravenous sea. The vision stabbed anew, each memory a fresh torment. He surged forward, the gale tearing at his mane, lashing his face. Every retreating wave felt like a theft, each grain of sand another lost chance. He desperately catalogued the jetsam, shattered planks, tangled netting, kelp coiling like mythical beasts. Emptiness. Then, a flicker of brightness against the gloom. A pale form, shimmering faintly, lay half swallowed by the tide. Cloud's breath hitched. He lurched to a standstill, legs unsteady. It was Lily. He floundered through the shallows, icy water biting at his lower legs. She was sprawled there, dress clinging to her frame, her dark hair spread like a shadowy crown. The wheelchair vanished. He refused to contemplate where it might have been dragged. He nudged her gently with his nose, a soft nicker rumbling in his chest. Lily, silence. He pushed harder this time, a plaintive whinny piercing the wind. Her skin was frigid, slick beneath his touch. He lowered his head, seeking the familiar whisper of lavender, the comforting warmth he knew whenever her hand rested on his neck. Only the harsh scent of salt and the ceaseless sea filled his world. Panic seized him. He pawed again, showering her face with cold spray. Lily, please wake up. Please. He exhaled against her face, a futile attempt to rouse her, to spark some sign of life in her expression. Still nothing. Her chest remained still. He lowered his head, straining to detect the faintest sigh of breath near her parted lips. Only the relentless waves mocked his vigil. A simmering rage began to displace the stark fear, a burning fury that threatened to eclipse grief, leaving only a raw, instinctive need for retribution. How could a father inflict such cruelty on his own daughter? He banished the thought, forcing himself to focus. He couldn't afford a break. Not now. Lily needed him. He nudged her again, more insistently, almost violently. Lily, fight. You have to fight. He blew on her once more, a prolonged, desperate gust. Still unresponsive, he began to circle her, hooves digging into the wet sand, his whinnies rising in pitch, cracking with despair. He couldn't lose her. He simply wouldn't. She was the only one who had ever truly seen him, who offered him genuine kindness, who understood the wild, solitary spirit that lived within him. He lowered his head, pressing his muzzle against her cold cheek, a silent vow, a desperate supplication to any watchful power. Please, please don't let her go. The waves persisted, the wind howled on, and Lily remained motionless, frigid, and silent on the unforgiving shore. The spark of hope, so recently bright, threatened to be extinguished by the encroaching shadows of despair. A sob tore from his throat, a primal sound of pure grief and utter helplessness. He was losing her, losing everything, and he remained rooted to the spot, impotent as the merciless tide edged closer to claiming her forever. Daisy's discovery. The tang of salt spray kissed Daisy's cheeks as she ambled along the beach, her Wellington boots sinking slightly into the damp sand. The late afternoon sun painted the sky in hues of apricot and rose, mirroring the shells scattered along the shoreline. She was searching for sea glass, her pockets already bulging with the milky greens and blues she'd collected. A flock of gulls wheeled overhead, their cries a familiar soundtrack to her solitary explorations. Rounding a rocky outcrop, a scene unfolded that stopped her in her tracks. A magnificent white horse stood knee-deep in the shallows, his head bowed, a low, guttural whimper escaping him. His usually pristine coat was plastered to his body, dark with seawater. Something was terribly wrong. Daisy cautiously approached, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. As she drew closer, she saw it. Lying motionless on the sand, partially submerged by the gentle lapping of the waves, was a Palomino mare. Her golden coat, usually gleaming, was dull and lifeless. The white horse, Cloud, didn't seem to notice Daisy at first. He nudged the mare, Lily, with his nose, a desperate plea in his eyes. "Lily, Lily, wake up," he seemed to be saying, his breath misting in the cool air. He lowered his head again, nuzzling her neck, then frantically pawed at the sand around her. Tears welled in Daisy's eyes. She knew, somehow, that Lily wasn't just sleeping. She was still, too still. She dropped to her knees beside the mare, her hand trembling as she reached out to touch her. Lily's coat was cold and clammy. Daisy pressed her ear against Lily's chest, straining to hear even the faintest heartbeat. Silence. Cloud finally noticed her then. He raised his head, his eyes wide with a raw, untamed grief that mirrored Daisy's own growing fear. He let out a piercing cry, a sound that echoed across the empty beach, a sound that spoke of loss and desperation. Daisy, despite her fear, felt a surge of determination. She couldn't just stand there and do nothing. She had to help. "It's okay," she whispered to Cloud, though she knew he couldn't understand her words. "I'm going to get help. I'll be right back." She scrambled to her feet, her boots sinking into the sand as she turned and ran back the way she had come. The distance to her cottage seemed impossibly long now, her legs burning with the effort. The image of Lily lying still on the beach and Cloud's heartbroken cries fueled her onward. Bursting through the cottage door, breathless and gasping, she blurted out, "Mom, Dad, there's a horse on the beach. Lily, she's hurt, really hurt, and Cloud is so sad." Her parents exchanged a worried glance. Daisy's stories could sometimes be a little imaginative, but the urgency in her voice, the genuine distress etched on her face, told them this was different. Daisy slowed down. Her mother said, kneeling to meet her daughter's gaze. "What horse?" "We're on the beach, near the rocks, past the cove. Lily, the Palomino, she's not moving. And the white one, Cloud, he's trying to wake her up, but she won't." Daisy's words tumbled over each other in her haste. Her father, a man of action, was already grabbing his coat. "Right, let's go. Show us, Daisy." He grabbed the first aid kit from the cupboard. "Come on, love," he said to Daisy's mother. "We need to see what's going on." Daisy didn't wait for them. She was already out the door, racing back towards the beach, her hope renewed. Maybe, just maybe, they could help Lily. Maybe it wasn't too late. Cloud was depending on her. Whispers of betrayal. The antiseptic scent of the hospital assaulted Lily's senses, a stark contrast to the ocean's breath she longed for with an ache that resonated through her very bones. Memory surged, an overwhelming tide of dread. The precipice, the biting wind, the sickening drop in the wheelchair, and her father's expression. Not fear, no regret, but resolve. Eyelids heavy, she blinked against the glare of a white ceiling, resolving into the blurry form of a nurse, her face etched with concern. "She's awake," the woman announced, her tone jarringly cheerful. A low moan escaped Lily's lips, a creak of protest from a body consumed by throbbing aches, a painful chorus punctuated by stabbing pangs. A detective, her face kind but weary, stood close to the bed. "Lily, can you tell me what happened?" she inquired softly. Dryness clawed at Lily's throat as she forced a swallow. "My father," she rasped, the word leaving a bitter residue. "He pushed me." The detective's brow creased in a frown. "Pushed you from where, Lily?" A torrent of accusations, a cascade of horrifying recollections, spilled out. The picnic, the argument, the unsettling gleam in her father's eyes, the deliberate trajectory of the wheelchair toward the unforgiving edge. Each phrase toward her heart, a brutal exposure of the raw, festering wound of betrayal. "He said I was a burden," she choked out, tears coursing down her cheeks. "That he couldn't cope any longer." The detective listened intently, her pen a frantic scribe on the notepad. She posed questions, subtle probes intended to clarify the sequence of events, to lend credence to the unbelievable. With a trembling voice and racking sobs, Lily answered as best she could. The door swung inward, revealing a looming silhouette. Cloud. His pristine coat seemed to radiate a soft light, his deep eyes pools of bottomless sorrow. A soft whicker, a mournful sound, resonated within Lily's soul. "He's been waiting," the nurse murmured. Understanding flickered in the detective's gaze as she nodded. "Give us a moment," she instructed her partner, stationed by the doorway. He retreated, leaving the detective, Lily, and Cloud in the hushed room. Cloud gently nudged Lily's hand with his velvety muzzle. With frail, trembling fingers, she reached out to stroke his face. His warmth was a soothing balm to her fractured spirit. He seemed to comprehend, to share her agony, to offer unwavering, silent devotion. He saw everything. She confided in the detective, her voice choked with emotion. "He knows." The detective met Cloud's gaze, her expression inscrutable. "Animals observe what escapes us, Lily," she observed quietly. "They sense what we try to deny." In the dimly lit study, Mr. Sterling sat. The only light sourced the glow of a desk lamp. He rotated the amber liquid in his glass, the ice tinkling softly against the crystal. The muted news reports played on the television screen, a relentless reminder. Glimpses of the beach, emergency vehicles, a white horse standing sentinel, flickered across the screen. He swallowed the alcohol in one large gulp, the burning sensation hardly registering. Numbness was his shield, an impervious wall against the rising tide of guilt. It was for the best, he reasoned, for them both. She wouldn't have wanted a life like that, confined to a crippled form, a perpetual reminder of his failings. He reached for the silver flask in his desk, his hand unsteady. He needed to quell the whispers, the insidious voices that echoed within him, accusing, condemning. Cloud remained at Lily's side, his steadfast presence a solace. Standing motionless, head lowered, his warm breath stirring softly against her skin. He was her anchor, her mute protector, a reassurance that, even in the bleakest of times, she was not deserted. He would be her strength now, as she had once been his. He would bear witness to justice. Justice served. The clink of ice against glass was the only sound in Mr. Sterling's study, a sound he'd become intimately familiar with over the past few days. Sunlight, usually welcomed through the large windows, felt intrusive, mocking. He hadn't shaved, and the fine silk of his dressing gown felt like a shroud. Each sip of scotch did little to soothe the burning in his gut, the constant, gnawing reminder of what he'd done. A sharp rap on the heavy oak door echoed through the room. He ignored it, hoping whoever it was would go away. The knocking persisted, growing more insistent. "Leave me be," he finally barked, his voice thick with liquor. The door swung open, revealing two uniformed officers. Behind them stood Detective Harding, his face grim. "Mr. Sterling," Harding said, his voice devoid of any warmth. "We have a warrant for your arrest. Obstruction of justice and attempted murder." Sterling stared, the glass slipping from his trembling fingers, the amber liquid spreading across the expensive Persian rug. He didn't resist as they cuffed him, the cold metal a stark contrast to the feverish heat of his shame. As they let him out, past the bewildered faces of the remaining staff, A single thought echoed in his mind. It was over. At the station, after hours of interrogation, the dam finally broke. He confessed everything, the words tumbling out in a torrent of self-pity and twisted justifications. The pressure, the fear, the desperation to secure his legacy. It all poured out, painting a portrait of a man driven to the edge by his own ambition and insecurity. Lily blinked, her vision still blurry. The sterile scent of the hospital assaulted her senses, a far cry from the crisp, earthy air she longed for. A soft nicker drew her attention. There, in the corner of her room, stood Cloud. His dark eyes, usually full of playful mischief, were now pools of quiet concern. He shifted his weight, the rhythmic sound strangely comforting. "Cloud?" she whispered, her voice raspy. He nudged her hand with his velvety nose, a gentle reassurance that he was there. A nurse explained that he had been relentlessly pacing outside the hospital, agitated, until they finally relented and allowed him in. He refused to leave her side. Detective Harding visited later that day. He looked weary, but a flicker of something akin to relief shone in his eyes. "Your father has confessed, Miss Sterling. He's in custody." The news washed over her, a strange mixture of relief and profound sadness. She closed her eyes, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. Harding cleared his throat. "I should also tell you, Cloud, he's quite the hero. He stayed with you after happened. He wouldn't leave you, even after he ran for help. The paramedics followed him back to the cliff. They said if it hadn't been for him." He trailed off, shaking his head. Lily reached out and stroked Cloud's soft muzzle. He leaned into her touch, his warm breath a comforting presence. She understood then the depth of their bond. He wasn't just her horse. He was her protector, her friend, her lifeline. The physical therapy was grueling. Each movement was a battle against pain, a testament to the damage her body had sustained. But with Cloud by her side, his steady presence a constant reminder of her strength, she pushed through. He'd stand patiently, watching her struggle, his eyes filled with an unwavering belief in her ability to recover. Slowly, painstakingly, she began to heal. The fractures mended, the bruises faded, but the emotional scars ran deeper. Yet, even those began to soften, nurtured by Cloud's unwavering devotion and the fragile hope that, one day, she would ride again. The image of the cliff still haunted her dreams, but now she saw Cloud there too, a powerful, reassuring presence, ready to carry her away from the darkness. A bond of friendship. The salt air stung Lily's still healing cuts, but she didn't mind. Each breath was a victory, a defiance of the cold, uncaring rocks that had tried to claim her. Cloud nuzzled her shoulder, his warm breath a comfort against the lingering chill in her bones. They were on the beach, a stretch of pale sand the hospital staff had cautiously recommended for gentle exercise. Exercise felt like a monumental task, but being near Cloud, feeling the steady rhythm of the waves, eased the ache in her soul far more than any painkiller. She leaned against him, feeling the solid strength of his muscles. He shifted, nudging her hand with his velvety nose until she reached up and stroked his forehead. "You saved me, Cloud," she whispered, the words swallowed by the wind. But he understood. He always did. Days bled into weeks, each one a testament to their resilience. Lily walked further down the beach, her steps growing steadier. Cloud stayed close, never straying too far, his watchful eyes scanning the horizon. They explored tidal pools teeming with tiny, scurrying life, watched the gulls wheel and dive, and listened to the endless susurrus of the ocean. Lily found solace in the simplicity of it all, a stark contrast to the tangled web of deceit and betrayal she was slowly beginning to unravel in her mind. One afternoon, a flash of yellow caught Lily's eye. A small, scruffy dog was bounding towards them, tail wagging furiously. Cloud snorted softly, his ears twitching. The dog, a whirlwind of energy, skidded to a halt in front of Lily, showering her with sandy kisses. "Daisy down," a voice called. A young woman, Her face, flushed from running, hurried after the dog. "I am so sorry. She doesn't usually bother people." Lily smiled, brushing the sand from her jeans. "It's all right. I don't mind." The woman, whose name was Sarah, explained that Daisy was a rescue dog, found abandoned near the docks. She was full of nervous energy and a boundless affection that she showered on everyone she met. Lily found herself drawn to Sarah's easy laughter and genuine kindness. Daisy, meanwhile, was captivated by Cloud. She circled him cautiously, sniffing his hooves, then, apparently satisfied, collapsed at his feet with a contented sigh. Cloud lowered his head, nudging her gently with his nose. "They seem to like each other," Sarah observed, a smile spreading across her face. And so began a new chapter in Lily's life. Sarah and Daisy joined them on the beach each day. Lily found herself laughing again, the sound rusty at first, but growing stronger with each passing week. Daisy, with her boundless enthusiasm, chased after the waves, digging frantically in the sand, always managing to bring a smile to Lily's face. Sarah, with her quiet strength and unwavering support, became the sister Lily never had. They built sand castles that succumbed to the tide, collected seashells that sparkled in the sunlight, and shared stories under the vast, endless sky. Lily told them about the accident, the betrayal, the lingering fear that still haunted her dreams. Sarah listened without judgment, offering a comforting hand or a reassuring word. Cloud, as always, stood guard, his presence a silent promise of protection. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Lily looked at her companions. Daisy was curled up asleep at Cloud's feet. Sarah was humming softly as she braided Lily's hair. A profound sense of peace settled over her, a feeling she hadn't experienced since before everything had fallen apart. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There were still battles to fight, truths to uncover. But she wasn't alone anymore. She had Cloud, her steadfast protector, and Sarah, her newfound friend, and little Daisy, a furry ball of joy who reminded her to find happiness in the simplest of things. As the stars began to twinkle in the darkening sky, Lily leaned back against Cloud, feeling the warmth of his body against hers. He lowered his head, resting his chin on her shoulder. In that moment, surrounded by the love and loyalty of her friends, Lily knew she would be all right. They would face whatever challenges lay ahead together. The beach, once a place of solitary recovery, had become a sanctuary, a testament to the power of friendship and the enduring strength of the human spirit. And Cloud, ever watchful, would keep them safe always.